It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas, and I am Juan Ramirez. And wow, Amy, I feel like we're starting to get into a rhythm. I mean, so many shows, so much Dodger news. Who knew? I really thought it was going to be a quiet week up until when pitchers and catchers report. But all of a sudden, we have more signings the Dodgers been having, and now all of a sudden the big news today, and that is Clayton Kershaw is back, ladies and gentlemen. Clayton Kershaw has signed with the Dodgers. So the preliminary here is it's a 1-year deal, but he does have a player option for 2025. Amy, I don't believe salary has been released, though, yet. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, and everything is pending the physical on Thursday. So it sounds like he's going to do that in Arizona, and then we'll kind of. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it'll all go great, and then he's going to probably get moved to the 60-day IL. And by probably, I mean he's going to.
So before we get into this whole Clayton Kershaw, because this whole episode is going to be about Clayton Kershaw, we have a new segment on the show that is debuting today, and that is called Base Running Blunders. This is the segment in the show where we acknowledge everything that we fucked up on either the last episode or previous episodes. So just save your hate, people. So instead of, coming after us on the social media and say, you guys don't know what you're talking about, look, we're humans. We make mistakes. We make base running blunders. And that is why this segment is called Base Running Blunders. Amy, what did I fuck up?
It wasn't you, it was me. So we did do our homework. The correct pronunciation is Fireisen for our reliever, JP. So
Okay,
just
so
for
so
everybody
help
else.
me out here because I know one of our listeners was saying it was fun to listen to Google butcher names. So help me out. Fire Eisen.
Fire Eisen.
So
So,
so
like,
it's fire and then Rich Eisen, but I'll take out the rich. So Fire
yes,
Eisen. Fire Eisen.
that's what I
That's how
saw.
I'm
I
gonna
was
remember it.
Hey, however it works for you. I was looking at Sportsnet LA's some of their coverage, and they were pronouncing it Fire Eisen. So, it is not Fayerson. No.
So for our viewers and our listeners, you just got a little glimpse at how meticulous Amy is. It was killing Amy that we butchered his name. So she told me, "Hey, we have to do this at the beginning of the show," and thus this segment has been born. What else did we fuck up, Amy?
So we were talking about you mentioned Keith Law's 100 prospects that did get dropped yesterday, and I knew we had some in like the 80s and the 90s, but we actually had some a little further up the list. So doing a little more research, we do have number 25 with I hope I say his name right, Josu De Paula. Number 33 is River Ryan. 86 is Dalton Rushing. 95 is Gavin Stone, and 99 is Tyrone Lorenzo. So I hope I didn't butcher those names too much, but we actually have 5 prospects on that list. So more than the 2 that I thought we had.
And if you did butcher Lorenzo, what we can go ahead and do is on the next episode of Base Running Blunders, we'll have Amy pronounce Lorenzo. But
Well, and it's a I, so it's Liranzo.
okay, so then I'm the one
Liranzo.
that fucked up. I'm the
Well,
one that fucked up.
I'm reading it, so I have that benefit. So that concludes our base running blunders for today.
So if we limit our base running blunders, we hopefully will win the game. So, all right. So let's get to the Clayton Kershaw news. I got to I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I expected that news today. I don't know when I expected it. I feel like everyone says this is the worst kept secret, right? That everybody knew that if Kershaw came back, he was going to come back to the Dodgers. I want to start off first, Amy. Your initial reaction to Clayton Kershaw signing with the Dodgers and having that player option for 2025.
This is the first time hearing of the player option, only because I've been at work all day, so I've only been able to like check the socials intermittently. But honestly, I guess there was a little bit of relief that he will, whether this is his last year or not, finish in a Dodger blue uniform. there was some concern on my end, I guess, that he would go to the Rangers. I know we've heard a lot of different takes as far as, maybe he should just retire or maybe let him go to the Rangers. But I think there is some nostalgia there where just having him in that Dodger blue uniform, I smiled when I think actually I got your text this morning that we were going to be re-signing him.
And one of the things that I want to do is also I want to make sure that we're giving credit to the people who are breaking this news because I know there's a lot, especially within new media. They take the information that other media sources are providing and they don't give the credit. And Amy, being a photographer, I know you hate it when like people use your pictures and they don't give you the credit, right? So I know that Joel Sherman and not Paul Heyman. Here, now I'm letting everyone know I'm a wrestling fan. John Heyman were the first ones that started reporting that Clayton Kershaw, that the Dodgers were close to this. Then Juan Toribio of MLB.com followed up with that. But in terms of the player option, the first person that I saw reporting that was Andy McCullough of The Athletic. So I want to make sure that Andy gets credit for that. Also, what Andy McCullough had said from The Athletic and everyone else is using that information is that Kershaw just began his throwing program last week. So I found that interesting because, I mean, to tell you the truth, Amy, I was not confident at all that Kershaw was going to come back, and I'm still
Really?
not that, and it was the reason why I say that is I just think physically he wasn't gonna be able to pitch because the injury allegedly that Kershaw has is the same injury that Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers had, and Woodruff is out for the whole season. So I'm not fully convinced yet that Kershaw is going to come back, but it's only in terms of the physical aspect. I mean, every year, what do we get? Cole Hamels is going to make a comeback, and then he actually starts pitching, and then we realize Cole Hamels isn't coming back, and Kershaw's getting older. So that was my reasoning. So the fact that he just started his throwing program last week, he must have been able, or unless this is similar to what the Lakers did with Kobe Bryant at the end of the year, and that is I don't know how much this is a legacy signing. I don't know if this is about the Dodgers being like, "Look, we want you to play in a Dodgers jersey for your whole career. We
I'm
don't
sure
want."
that factors in. I think my only concern with any legacy signings is that are we giving up a roster spot if he does come off the IL that we could be using for somebody else as it gets more competitive, towards the end of the season? But
Yeah,
I'm sure
and
that's
that
a factor.
and are you okay with that? I mean, are you okay with I know money is not an issue for the Dodgers because they just spent $1 billion in the offseason. So whatever they end up paying Kershaw for this year, it doesn't matter because of everything that Kershaw has done for the Dodgers in the past. So regardless of what his agent was asking, you would be okay with paying whatever to Clayton Kershaw.
I think this is where I'm a little more cautious in the spending, but I think because we've already proven that we're going to do that in this case, I would say yes. Um, so the earliest I think it was Juan Toribio who posted that he could be back in late July. I'm a little skeptical about that. But you know what? I'm not a doctor, so what do I know? But I'm just curious if that's the case. It would be interesting to see where our bullpen is at that point. And I'm sure we can talk about this more later. But starting pitchers are not going as deep as they used to. So if we start taxing that bullpen more, and then now we're giving up a potential spot for somebody that could be a little more consistent, that would be my only hesitation at this point of giving up that roster spot essentially. But
Well,
otherwise, if he can pitch, I mean, he's got the numbers.
I want to get into the rotation, but before we get into the rotation, Jack Harris, and by the way, breaking news, everybody, Jack Harris is once again now the beat writer for the Dodgers in the LA Times. If no one has seen that, I'm reporting that. I'm letting you know, and this is coming straight from Jack. He came out, and here's the thing. We're gonna save it for another story. I had reached out to the LA Times for comment on this, but they never responded to me because who the fuck are we, right, Amy? So I was very curious to see how how the LA Times, the paper of record, was going to cover the Dodgers with the fact that they had laid off Jack Harris. Now they have like 5 or 6 other writers. Most of them are columnists. Most of them write on a national level about the Dodgers. But Jack Harris was the beat writer. And Jack Harris, just a few days ago, actually, I think it was right after Dodgers Fest, Jack Harris said, "Hey, just kidding, I'm back." Now, I had seen that I know the union for those writers in the LA, for those journalists, excuse me, I believe it is, I think it's called the LA Times Guild, but don't hold me to that. I know they were negotiating, and Jack wasn't the only reporter. There were other journalists that actually did get their jobs back. So Jack Harris is now did get his back. So he is back on the beat. He will be covering the Dodgers. And he was reporting that, and I don't know who the source is on this, of course, but this is coming from Jack Harris's reporting, that maybe Clayton Kershaw was contemplating a change of scenery. Now, I don't know if you saw this, Amy, but earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, Clayton Kershaw's jersey was retired. His high school jersey was retired, his number at his high school, and Chris Young was there. And for those of you who don't know who Chris Young is he's not the general manager. I think he's the president of baseball operations for the Rangers, Texas Rangers. He was also there at the ceremony because his number was being retired. So, of course, immediate speculation at that point. Oh, Kershaw and Chris Young are talking. And for the longest time, there was always this narrative that if Kershaw's going to leave the Dodgers, he's going to leave them for the Texas Rangers. So I saw that, and I hate responding to narratives that we don't know it's true. So part of me is actually very grateful that Kershaw finally signed today, and we could put an end to that narrative, because Kershaw never talks about it. We never hear it coming from Kershaw, but
Well,
I
and they went to high school together. I mean, they are actually friends. So like if he was going to go somewhere else and it's close to his hometown, I mean, that was where some of the speculation came from. I think you saw him last year when you traveled to Texas and you saw how comfortable he was walking around that field, being there with his family. So I mean, it was a real concern, I think, for a lot of fans that he could potentially, if he did decide to come back, sign with the Rangers.
Yeah, and that was true. When the Dodgers were in Texas last year, I was covering the game, and I saw Kershaw walking through the tunnel, not just with his wife and his kids, but with his parents, with other family members. And that was the first time that it really hit me that I thought, this thing Kershaw to Texas, this thing is real.
We
I mean,
take
it's
for
got
granted that he could just stay in LA all this time, but his family, his roots are in Texas.
I mean, it's got to mean something. I mean, Freddie Freeman, coming to the Dodgers, the Dodgers gave him a suite, and his family is in the suite watching him play all the time. I think we take that for granted, what it means to be able to have your family with you at all times, and to see that with Kershaw, I thought, no, this could be real. This is something that could actually happen.
Have you ever
But
played that game with, like, your friends or I mean, I did with my like, if I ever had to go play for another team, like, if somebody drafted me, obviously, I'm never gonna be drafted into the MLB, but, like, would I be able to play for the Giants, or what would I do if they, tried to ship me across, to the other coast? Obviously, it's never gonna happen, but these are real things that happen to players all the time. Like, you grow up a Dodgers fan and you end up going and playing maybe for your arch rival, or, a team that maybe you just wouldn't rather be on. Like, these guys are they probably grew up being fans too, and I forget that sometimes and have to remind myself that they probably have roots somewhere else that they'd rather be.
No, but in the end, I'm sure all of these guys, they just want to be in the show. But I have talked to former major leaguers. Ricky Romero was from East LA. He was a guy who grew up as a Dodger fan, but he played for the Blue Jays. And then when the Blue Jays didn't re-sign him, the Giants, and he talked about it. He had told me that story, that it felt weird wearing the black and orange because he was a guy who grew up being a Dodger fan. But I think there reaches a point, Amy, where you're just like, I just want to be in the major leagues. I don't care if I'm pitching for the Kansas City Royals. It's being in the major leagues. It's getting paid to play baseball. I think that's what matters. But with the Kershaw thing,
100%. I agree. I will just throw this out there though. Jackie Robinson, like hats off to him because when they traded him to the Giants, he retired. So there's merit to all of that, and I believe that if you get a chance to play in the show, you're going to go play wherever they send you. So
that's so funny. That was the example I was going to go to too. Was the fact that I don't know if I would have the cojones to do what Jackie Robinson did and say, no, I absolutely refuse because I mean Hershiser played for the Giants after he played with the Dodgers. So I mean, there's been examples of it. Jock Peterson. I know Jock Peterson didn't grow up being a Dodger fan. I mean, he is from Northern California, but he wore the Dodgers uniform, and there have been many Dodgers that have been Giants players also. So it is interesting, but the fact that Kershaw finally made the decision, and who knows why? I mean, I think there's so many factors that were probably everybody's like, well, it makes sense for him to come back to the Dodgers. The doctor who did the surgery on him, Dr. Neil Elatrash. I mean, he's comfortable with him. He's still going to be able to rehab in Texas. So, I mean, I'm sure maybe that factored in. Um, the legacy aspect of it. I don't think I've ever heard Kershaw say that it's important for him to wear a Dodgers uniform his whole career. I think it's important for the fans and maybe the organization. It's nice, but I've never heard Kershaw say, "Hey, I want to wear a Dodger uniform for my whole career. That's important to me." Or am I wrong there?
I mean, I haven't, but I think that's the emotional side of fans, right? We get so invested in this game, we're so passionate about it. He may never have said that, but that's what we want. Sure, he could go play for the Rangers for a year and potentially retire, and if when he gets into the Hall of Fame, go in as a Dodger, but I think there's just something about being in that one uniform your entire career because it just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, I mean, it is a rarity. I mean, when we're talking about legacy, how much did it factor in that last start against the Serpientes in the playoffs? Like, just and I was just listening to the radio today. The haters were out and they were playing audio clips of Kershaw giving up home run after home run, and of course, all from the playoffs. I don't want to single anyone out, but if anybody listens to ESPN LA, you guys know who I'm talking about. Who did that? But I mean, does that factor in for Kershaw? And is it tied together? When you see that this team is, how much the players, they're clearly sending the sign they want to win. They're going to do everything possible to win. Is it a combination of like, I don't want to go out the way that I went out, and then these guys give me the best chance to win the World Series? Because in the end, that's that's the only thing left for him to play for, right? Is winning another World Series.
I don't think the 2 are mutually exclusive. I think both can exist in the same place, and when he's healthy, like, he was a contender for the Cy Young last year until he got injured, and then he didn't hit the requirements, but he had a pretty stellar year up until he had that soreness that kicked in about, what was it, July when we sidelined lined him for a little bit. He came back in August, and we all noticed the velocity was down, but he helped carry the team. He helped get us where we were along with some of those other pitchers when we were limping along in the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I think, and again, I don't know if I've heard him say this, but I am curious if he believes, if he subscribes to anything like this, that if I win another World Series, because everyone's going to sit there and say 2020 was a Mickey Mouse championship, it wasn't real, which is all bullshit. But if he has another World Series, he can sit there and say, look, say whatever you want to say. I won another one, but I'm sure they're all I hope I'm wrong, but I'm sure they're going to be like, yeah, but you joined a super team. You came back to a super team to win a World Series. Look,
So
if
who wouldn't? Oh, no, 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 please. Let me go play for one of these other teams that isn't actually contending. Please. No, no, that's what I want my legacy to be. Come on.
yeah, I mean, if the Dodgers end up winning the World Series this year, revisionist history, because I feel like I'm Quentin Tarantino here, but you can sit there and say, like, that guy could have retired with 3 World Series rings because you don't. like anybody, I don't automatically award 2017 to Kershaw because you don't know. And that was, I think that's what's even the most frustrating thing with what happened in 2017 is I don't think the Astros had to cheat. I mean, they could have, we just will never know if they could have beaten the Dodgers straight out, but because they did what they did, they went ahead and muddied the waters. So,
I will never say that that World Series should have been ours and it is rightfully ours, only because we will never know. Like, you don't know how it would have played out. Maybe like in 2020, it looked like we were down some of those games. Like, we almost didn't make it through each of those levels, and we pulled it out and we won. That could have happened in 2017, but we'll never know. So, both sides. I mean, they cheated themselves and they cheated the Dodgers and the fans, and we'll save that venom for another time. I'll tone myself down.
well, the only other thing I also keep hearing, and I don't think Kershaw, I don't know if this registers for Kershaw, but this is going to be a nice little side effect. And that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you're the stats person here, but I believe he's 56 strikeouts away from 3,000 strikeouts. And he'll be joining a very exclusive club if he's able to go ahead and do that. There's a good chance if he does come back in August, if he pitches really well, he could. I know 56 strikeouts doesn't seem a lot, but again, you don't know how many starts he's going to have, especially if the Dodgers are doing a six-man rotation. And who knows what the rotation is going to look like at that time. And also, who knows where they're going to be? If the Dodgers have already clinched the division in August because everybody expects them to go 162-0, like, how many innings is Kershaw going to pitch? Like, how is he going to be used? So I don't think it's a given that he can get 56 strikeouts, even if he comes back in late July. What do you think about that, Amy?
I'm looking at the numbers right now, and you're right. He is 56 away, so he's at 2,944 and holding. It looks like on average he strikes out about 137, 144. He's done that in the last 3 years. But to your point, he's had anywhere from 22 to 24 starts. Even in 2020, he had 10 starts and he struck out 62. So depending on when he comes back and how many games he actually gets to play in, that's definitely gonna factor into how close he gets to that number.
Yeah, so I mean that's something to factor. Look, would I love him to come back and join the 3,000 strikeout club? Of course, absolutely. But my thing is that I'm still not fully convinced in terms of is he if he's going to pitch, because if that injury is, and the thing is we really don't know how bad that injury is, because that's a guy who's never going to use it as an excuse. Anytime you did ask him, he always said, I'm fine, and clearly he wasn't fine. So I'm not sure. I mean, what happens if we start getting that again? But I mean, they scheduled a physical on Thursday. Now, this Thursday, of course, that's the date that the Dodgers can start moving players to the 60-day injured list. And just to clarify something here for people, they can't just put him on the 60-day injured list. They need to sign him first. And then when they sign him, they put him on the 40-man, and then they can move him to the IL. So in order to sign him, they need to make room on the 40-man. So there are a couple of candidates that you can already do that. I mean, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, those are all. But what's interesting to me is Ryan Brazier. You have to do the same thing for Ryan Brazier. You had to put Ryan Brazier on the 40-man. So because the Dodgers have plenty candidates to move to the 60-day injured list, excuse me, I'm curious as to who they do end up moving to the 60-day, who they end up doing it first, because eventually all of these people will be moved to the 60-day injured list. But do you have any concerns? Are you worried what if something comes up in this physical on Thursday? Or it doesn't matter if something comes up on this physical, like we talked in the beginning of this show. The Dodgers do this because Kershaw deserves to play his whole career for the Dodgers.
I think that comes down to how valuable that roster spot is to them. If they wanna bring him on, physical pending or not, however it shakes out, If they want that legacy player on there, then they're essentially playing with, a 39-man roster once they do bring him back from the 60-day IL if he can't perform. Or do they potentially do something that he's never done in his career and they don't have him start? They have him as a reliever, or I don't know, they jump him to the closer role, but do they put him on even less innings, and that's how you keep him on the roster and then justify it, while also taking advantage of, if he can pitch, that's the way to do it.
Well, I mean, let's get into it. What is this rotation going to look like? Because I know everybody is super excited. And all of a sudden, all these options in the starting rotation. I mean, the number of pitchers so we have Yamamoto for sure. We have Tyler Glass now, um, Bobby Miller. So yeah, those three for sure. Uh, James Paxton, I think you can go ahead and also. So you got four there. Bueller, that's a fifth. Now we just don't know when Bueller is going to join the starting rotation, because Brandon Gomes told us at Dodgers Fest that they're going to take it very easily with Bueller. But other pitching options, Emmett Sheehan. I think Emmett Sheehan proved himself last year. I'm very excited to see his growth for this year. Is he? I think he's definitely going to have a shot in the beginning of the season to be a part of this rotation. But then once they start working Walker Bueller back, then I'm gonna see what happens. Ryan Yarborough, who piggybacked a lot. We talked about this in the last episode. He's a hybrid. I know we don't really consider him a part of the bullpen, but I don't know if we consider him a part of the starting rotation. I know people will throw Michael Grove in that same category, but I am curious if the Dodgers will just automatically just start transitioning him as a reliever, because look, I mean, this starting rotation is already crowded. And then Gavin Stone. I myself, Gavin Stone, I think, is starting the season in AAA. I don't see him, unless if Gavin Stone is on the opening day roster, whether it be in Korea or when they actually start in the States, then something has gone horribly wrong. And this is not to talk bad on Gavin Stone, but it's just you signed all these other pitchers so you wouldn't have to use Gavin Stone in the rotation. I think Gavin Stone is looking like a trade chip now, to tell you the truth. But my thing is this: everybody's so excited, but Amy, all these names, the majority of them, they're all injury risks. And I know you can sit there and say that about any pitcher, but I think this is the key to this Dodger season. Yes, on paper, they look like they could be great. They could be very special. But the greatest indicator of injury is past injury. And we're talking about guys that have injuries, are coming back from injuries.
Well, and I think while we're waiting for Bueller to get stretched out and come back in kind of more of a full capacity, I think maybe you do things where, like, you piggyback, especially as we're trying to decide, are we going to do a five-man rotation or a six-man rotation as we start to, like, transition Yamamoto to our pitching style. Maybe that's where you do use, Paxton and Yarbrough as, hey, you guys go a little longer. We're going to put Sheehan on the back end or the front end, however you want to jigsaw that. And maybe that's where, I don't know that Gavin Stone will have a place in that, but maybe that's where he comes in too, to eat some innings, whether they, put him down to AAA, or try to use him that way and just see, okay, how does it shake out this year compared to last year?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, going to be one of the big, and so I just mentioned 10 names right there for our starting rotation, and I didn't even mention Kershaw, right?
And I totally overlooked Grove just now. So Grove over Stone for sure. So, I mean, he might be the one that you start piggybacking with Yarbrough or even Paxton, and just, hey, these are a package deal. When we're going to pitch, we're going to throw these guys out there just to make sure that we're not stressing anybody out, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, starting pitchers aren't going that deep. So, if we don't want to tax our bullpen, we have to come up with a different strategy to get through this season. They're just
And
not
I
going 7, 8, 9 innings anymore.
And I guess it's a good problem to have, right? Because you can never have enough pitching. I mean, as you can see, what happened to the Dodgers at the end of last year. But I mean, this is going to be part of the journey, as Amy likes to say, because if everything goes as planned, like I said, Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Bobby Miller, I think for sure are in your rotation. All right. Those, if everything is going right, those three pitchers are the ones that you want. Now, if Buehler comes back and he is the Walker Buehler of old, that's four. So for that fifth spot, that to me, best case scenario is that Kershaw would be your number five. Now, if you get to the playoffs, Kershaw is your number five. That means, in my opinion, Kershaw's not starting a game, and that would
No.
be a good thing for the Dodgers. And is Kershaw going to be? Is he going to be happy about that? I mean, this is what happens when you get towards the end of their career. We don't know if that's how it's going to play out, but am I have is that scenario just way too crazy for you, Amy? Because technically you need four, right? So based on performance and what everybody is telling me, to me, those four would be Yamamoto, Glasnow, Buehler, and Bobby Miller.
Right. Right. And I mean, I think you can slate Kershaw in there, but again, depending on how many innings we get out of him, that's really going to be the indicator. Maybe he's one of the ones we piggyback against because I don't want to only put it on game one of the postseason last year because that's really not fair because he did have a really good year, up until that point, up until he got injured, but he did struggle in that inning. So depending on how well the surgery works out, are they going to wait to stretch him out? So even if he comes back in late July, maybe early August, we're still not going to see deep innings for him. So he is, even if he is a starter, he's still going to get paired up with somebody, or we're going to go through a bunch of bullpen arms, which you've said in the past, that's not a great way to go because that's more opportunity for error. If one or two of them have a bad day, you're making more changes versus having fewer pitchers come in. So I think at that point he can be in there. We might have to pair him up. And then I think the other challenge is we don't know what actually happens when they're making those decisions. So, it was floated around last year that maybe Bobby Miller would start game one and then Kersh would go game two. And then, we saw that play out and it was reversed. We don't know what drove that decision. We don't know that Kersh was like clamoring to have that happen. Like, I need to be the game one starter. We don't know if that's just what the front office decided to do. And so I think that's where sometimes not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, we tend to put some of our own projections on that. We have no clue. Kersh could just be like, "Hey, whatever's good for the team," and that's the end of it. So I think it's just we're really just going to have to wait till he comes back from that IL and see where he's at.
Absolutely, and that's the problem, right? We're always looking ahead. Like, look at me, I'm already the playoffs, and we haven't even played, the regular season. It's a for me, it's a far gone conclusion, right? The Dodgers are going to win the division. The Dodgers are going to make it into the playoffs. But this is why you play the games, right? Because on paper, this team looks like it's great. This team looks like it's going to do something very, very special, but we don't know. There's a lot of question marks, not only in the starting rotation, but last episode when we were going through the bullpen.
But
Well,
that's why we love and hate baseball, right? Like on paper, the Dodgers should win it every year. And yet we've had some underdogs the last couple of years, take it. And that's I don't like it when we get knocked out. But I mean, but that is the beauty of baseball. You can't for all the people who say like, "Oh, you're buying a championship." But really? Are we? Because other teams are doing more with less, and it really just comes down to what happens during that year, how many people got injured, what shakes out in a certain game. So like there's so many uncontrollable factors that you can only control so much in the game. And I think that's why we love and hate it.
And it was interesting because I saw a very positive reaction. Everybody was very happy to see Kershaw come back. Now, before this announcement, there are some Dodger fans that I've spoken to that didn't want Kershaw back. That were like, "Look, it's time to turn the page," and it does feel like this is a new era in Dodger baseball. Justin Turner's not here anymore. Clayton Kershaw is part of that era. It's Shohei, it's Yamamoto, it's Bobby Miller. We have new Dodgers here. So it is one of those things where I am curious as the season progresses and if he does end up pitching, because again, I can't stress enough. I'm not confident that he's gonna be able to pitch, but if he does, will let's end on this, Amy. Do you think this is it? This is his last year? If he comes back and he pitches, especially if they win the World Series, if he pitches well, do you think he calls it quits?
Ooh, I mean, so for us fans, again, that's gonna hinge on how healthy he is when he comes back. I mean, if I'm putting on my Kershaw hat, if I go out, I just had a rough ending to the previous year, had surgery, I'm coming back halfway through, and I win the World Series, for me, I think I would call it. I'd like end my career on that high note and ride off into the sunset. But he's also a big competitor, so, like, that's the thing, like, if that happens, does he come like, "Can I get one more year?" Ah, I would root, I think, for retiring, but I think Kersh will surprise us every time.
Yeah, and that's something, of course. I mean, that's just a hot fire take. That's just some podcast talk right there because we don't know. I do know that, especially last year. I just because you're right. I think he pitched really well last year before he got hurt, and I kept telling everybody, my friends, and being like, "Hey, appreciate Kershaw, man, because this could be the end. This could be the last time." And that's a dude that we just took for granted, because he was so good. And it was like, look, we got a chance to. This is our Sandy Koufax, and if you look at it, he has better numbers than Koufax. He did it longer than
And
Koufax.
this is something like me and my best friend, she goes to a lot of the baseball games with me, like, when we know he's gonna hit a milestone, like, we're there, we wanna be there. I don't wanna just watch it on TV if I can help it. That I mean, that's my luxury of being a season ticket holder, but, like, that's something I wanna see, like, people will go in, like, I might buy a baseball for that game, or I have one of those little baseball passports, like, make sure I get it stamped for that day, and it's just it's that again, baseball being a unifier, we're all there for that, and, like, those games where he's pitching and he hits another record, it gets quiet in the park, but it also gets loud afterwards, and everybody just celebrates him, any player that does that, right? You get the hat tip, like, you're all sharing that moment, it's not just about the player, it's about the fans and everybody, and those are the things I really hope he comes back healthy and he gets to have some more of those moments, and we get to have those moments with him before the season's over.
The only thing that I am a little bit bummed on, and this is just me being completely greedy, and it's like, look, come on, everybody knows he's the greatest pitcher in Dodgers history. Um, is I would have liked him to retire as the Dodgers all-time wins leader, and I know this is going to come off as disrespectful to Don Sutton, but I just feel looking at this Dodgers history, the people that should be at the top of all the pitching records, it should either be Sandy Koufax or it should be Clayton Kershaw, because I feel those are the two best pitchers that this
And do you know
organization.
how many games away he is from Don Sutton's record? I don't.
Don't hold me to it. I want to say he's in the 20 range.
Okay.
But I just
And that's for him, that's about a full season's worth of pitching.
Yeah, there's just no way. There's no way. I think even if he was healthy and he played a whole season, I think the way it ended last year, my calculations was he needed at least 2 seasons to pass Don Sutton. And like you said, we don't know. If he pitches well this season, he may want to come back. I mean, that's the problem, right? Is we're all just projecting this narrative onto Clayton Kershaw, and
Poor guy, he
look,
hasn't even stepped foot on a field yet.
exactly. We're making a living talking about this guy, but I'm just grateful that a decision was made, and we don't need to go ahead and speculate anymore. And now we can just actually react because pitchers and catchers are reporting at the end of this week. I mean, spring training games are, I believe, about what, 2 weeks away,
I think so,
or two
I
or
can't
three.
recall when the
It's
first one is.
from the time that I think it's in the 20s of February is when the first
It
Dodgers
would be
spring training.
February 22nd. The home opener is actually the following day. We play against San Diego on that Thursday, and then we come
Yes.
home that Friday.
So a little over 2 weeks, we're going to see some spring training games. We're going to see how some of these new acquisitions look in games. And I know Amy's going to be there in spring training. She's going to be giving us some coverage for Baseball Shangri LA. So, any last words before we end this episode, Amy?
No, congratulations to Kersh. I mean, that it's got to be a tough decision to make all around, go to another team, stay with your team, retire. It can't be easy, and good for him, good for us. Hopefully we get to see some records this year.
Yeah, I mean, like I would like to get him, see him get to those 3,000, and yeah, like you said, it would be nice to see him play his whole career as a Dodger. But most of him, I would like to see him win another World Series for everything that dude went through in the postseason. I think to win another World Series would make a difference. Uh,
Redemption on so many levels, just so many levels of yes, I
And,
did it.
and look, the guy's already a Hall of Famer. All right. There's nothing else. I mean, he's a first ballot, unanimous Hall of Famer. There's nothing else that this guy can do that's going to, but I think for him, especially since I have that image of him running out of the bullpen when they won the World Series in 2020 and just
This gave me
seeing
chills.
seeing how happy and that sense of relief. I would like to see that for him again, just because he did so much for this organization. The joke has always been the reason why he has these back problems is because he was carrying the Dodgers, for all those years. So yeah, I'm glad that Kershaw's back. I would like to see him win one more World Series. I'm just very curious as to where he fits in all this because of all the pieces that the Dodgers have. And if all these pieces do what they're supposed to do, I think it's going to be hard for him to have a spot. But we're
And
going to
for all
see.
our speculation, the front office has probably already got like 1, 2, 3, and 4 contingency plans in place. So, I mean, we'll speculate all we want, but they have this locked.
They have to do that because they sign players that have injuries and a history of injuries. So,
So you mean baseball? Baseball.
yeah, that's true. I stand corrected. Okay, well, this has been another episode of Baseball Shangri LA. This is the time where I remind all of you, if you are stumbling across us for the very first time, if you're on YouTube, you can see there are our handles there for X, and on X it's BB Shangri LA. On Instagram, Threads, and Twitch, it's Baseball Shangri LA. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube, but also make sure you're subscribed to the audio portion of the podcast when you're driving, when you're working out. I mean, we just had a Pineapple Express here in California. It's just, hey, stay inside and listen to all the episodes of Baseball Shangri-La. Tell your friends, tell people, hey, man, Dodger season's about to start. Listen to Amy and Juan. And like I said, we plan to hopefully do lives so we can have this be a more interactive. I really appreciate those listeners, those viewers that send us comments on the show. We love that type of interaction.
You guys are
So,
awesome.
you guys are the best. So, we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks for hanging with us.